the EVP of DAZN, Mr. Joe Markowski. Hello, Joe. How are you? This is great. Thank you, Eddie, for stopping by. And now we've got the big boss man here. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks for having us, and we're delighted to be working with you this week.
Yes, I should say, in the interest of full transparency, doing a little stuff for DAZN. So I want everyone to know that we did the face-to-face yesterday with Katie and Amanda, which was fun. Different dynamic. Obviously, it's not Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley who hate each other, but I think the Jake and Eddie one tomorrow is going to be very spicy.
Well, yeah, I heard that conversation.
Yes.
I think Jake's probably got tougher work somewhere else, either in a ring or an MMA octagon than Eddie Hearn.
I saw Eddie go with Frank Smith. I thought,
Yeah, different weight categories, those two, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Eddie and Frank are doing a great job. The addition of Jake and MVP to this promotion has been fantastic for us. It's one of the ingredients that makes this fight truly quite special, as is your involvement this week. So we're very excited going into Saturday. Pretty historic moment for women's sport more broadly.
Yes, and I want to talk about that. But first, for the audience that may not be so familiar with you, you are under 35, 34, 33?
I'm 34, yeah.
34.
Yeah.
You're the executive vice president of DAZN.
Yeah.
I believe SBJ named you top 40 under 40.
Yeah, you're embarrassing me now.
It's pretty damn impressive.
No, it's good. I'm very lucky to have been right place, right time with DAZN at a young age.
How long have you been with DAZN?
Well, DAZN originally came out of a company called Perform Group. I was with them I've been there 10, 12 years now. 11, 12 years. And a group of us split off and started DAZN in 2015 prior to a launch in 2016. So it's grown from there. I've been lucky. I've been around the world. I lived in Japan for 2 years, launching our business there. And a lot of people, I think, in the States, for obvious reasons, sort of think DAZN is just a boxing business or a fight sports business. We're a lot more than that in other parts of the world. In different countries, we have a much broader set of content. So Canada, where you hail from, we're a leading NFL broadcaster, a bunch of European soccer content as well. So fight sports is central to our business, but it's not everything we do.
When the pandemic hit, how worried were you about the state of the business?
Pretty worried, because the state of the industry was pretty treacherous there for a while. Many industries around the world obviously got hit pretty significantly by COVID. Sport, I think, more than most. We had to navigate it. We actually, I think, ended up using it to our benefit. We reset a few things. We've reworked relationships. People like Eddie, we had tough but important conversations with. For our boxing business, I think we got it back on our feet quite quickly. It was only like 2 or 3 months, I think, without any content. But we were at a point where it could have gone one or two ways for a couple of months. I'm proud we sort of stepped through it, and it's testament to the efforts of everyone involved: media, journalists, fighters in particular, commissions, promoters. It was a group effort to get back online really, and get back to producing content and delivering for fight fans. And that's what we've done, I think, pretty consistently at a high level since we got back in sort of summer of 2020. So
I recognize this is a tough question, and you're obviously coming from a place where you're working for the company, so you're somewhat biased. But if you could tell me your feelings on the state of the business right now, the state of the business that you are in, the OTT business, the boxing business, which is such a big part of at least DAZN in North America and in the US in particular. How do you feel about how healthy it is right now?
Well, I think it's interesting. Streaming beyond sport more broadly has obviously become the preferred consumption method for most people in developed media countries like the US or Canada or the UK. Apart from maybe the older generation who are still on linear television. If you look at Wall Street stuff and valuations, that's been flying for a while. There's now a challenge to that, saying, okay, how can you develop your relationships with consumers? How can you find ways to engage them in different ways? So we announced a betting opportunity and a partnership last week. That will be a major part of our business going forward.
Now, will that just be in Canada to start?
No, it will be it'll be led out of our major markets: Germany, the UK, Spain, Germany, Italy.
US?
And the US is different. Obviously, it's state-by-state regulation, so we need to tread state-by-state there. It's probably easier to roll out in different parts of the world where betting's more evolved. But even with Netflix, so they're looking at advertising. So I think those businesses, ourselves being one, are looking for new ways to develop relationships with consumers and find ways to make our products more sticky, i.e. you want to spend more time on them with different services. So I think that's the next phase of OTT. How can we make the experience of watching on a streaming platform significantly better and different to watching on a traditional linear television? The criticism I would make of our business and the industry of sports streaming more broadly is what have we actually done fundamentally to change the consumer experience? 10 years ago, if you were watching any sports broadcast on ESPN or Sky Sports in the UK or BT Sport, you would have done so just leaning back in your television, watching a linear channel. That's what most people still do now. There's not a significant change in terms of user experience. What we have the opportunity to do now with new technologies and the reduction of latency is to make that experience significantly better than watching on a linear platform. Betting, communication with friends, alternative broadcast streams, what we're doing with Canelo and Barstool Sports next week, which we should talk about. There's a number of things we can layer into the broadcast that traditional linear television could not do. And I think that is where you significantly enhance the quality of the user experience. And that's where the user, the consumer, the fan, ultimately gets more value out of a product like ours versus a traditional linear television network. So that's where I think streaming is going. And I think that's the sort of state of the industry right now.
There's a lot of exciting things going on. Obviously, there's this weekend's fight. There's next weekend, Canelo. It seems like I love the UK cards in particular because it's a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
And
you still get to bed early.
Oh, it's tremendous. And it doesn't usually coincide with the UFC stuff going on Saturday.
Yeah.
It feels like every weekend there's a big fight on DAZN. So as far as boxing is concerned, it feels like you guys are firing on all cylinders. But as you know, we are an MMA show.
Yeah.
And so I'm really curious about, I was at that first press conference. I remember when you guys made the announcement, June of 2018 with Bellator.
Yeah.
And I believe it was a 5-year deal with Bellator. And then it just kind of like slowly fizzled away over the last, year or so. What happened with Bellator?
Well, look, we had a great relationship. I think Scott Coker is one of the best promoters that we've worked with in any fight sport. We have a great relationship with him personally. Look, without wanting to go into any like specific contractual stuff, it was a consequence of COVID that came to an end. We're disappointed it did, but it ultimately was agreed between us and Bellator that we'd step away from that. We're playing a very niche game now in the US. Like I mentioned, Japan and Germany and Italy, we're playing multi-sport broadcast games. We're buying rights to various sports. Our strategy, with good reason, in the US is to focus specifically on one significant carved out niche, which is boxing, and that's what we've chosen to do. I think Bellator are in great hands. They've obviously got a parent company that could give them a great distribution on broadcast and give them space to grow in a way that maybe we were not going to give them. So I think for both sides, it was the right deal, and we've agreed that and sort of shook hands and wished each other well. That's where we're at, and I think we're very happy in the US for the next sort of medium term, call it 3 or 4 years, to focus on boxing. You're right to say our boxing business is strong. I mean, Eddie wants to do a show a week. Yeah, it's almost like reining him in because he's rabid on that stuff. With the UK, our Spanish and Italian deals with Matchroom, our relationship with Golden Boy, which gives us a lot of sort of West Coast, Mexican American and Hispanic focused shows. We're doing great things, and I think we're serving boxing fans in particular with a very strong regular output of content, which makes us pretty confident we're the best value play in fight sports for those fans.
And again, obviously the natural follow-up is, because it wasn't just Bellator, there was KSW on there for a bit as well. Any chance of MMA returning to DAZN or for the foreseeable future?
The door is open, but I think sometimes, you're probably better placed than most to point to this, I think the crossover between MMA fans and boxing fans sometimes gets slightly exaggerated. I think they're separate audiences. There is, of course, like a crossover.
I'm trying my best to bridge the gap, but I'll have Canelo on the show and people are like, "Who's that?" I'm like, "What?" You don't know.
No, I think the crossover gets exaggerated. We've still got work to do to reach out to, make ourselves known to boxing fans in the US. We're only 4 or 5 years old. This takes a long time in this country. It's a big old country with a lot going on. So we're going to focus on continuing to do that. And look, the door's always open for new content opportunities, but we're going to put the majority of our resources towards boxing in the medium term because we think there's a good business opportunity there.
Now, this is very inside baseball, so to speak, but I love this stuff when it comes to journalism. One thing that I really like about what you guys do, and I would say this even if you weren't sitting here, and in particular from your website perspective and your social media perspective, is like I've seen you guys this week tweet about Stevenson Valdez. Yeah. I've seen you guys talk about Fury. I've seen you guys talk about other things that have nothing to do with DAZN. Without getting too far into it, I just came from a network that wouldn't do that. No. You know what I mean? They wouldn't talk about the other things, the competition, the counter programming, if you will. Why does DAZN feel like it's important to do that sort of thing, even if it's something that's not on your network or on your platform?
Because we're serving consumers, fans, who don't care about politics of broadcasters and promoters. They are boxing fans, right? And they want to know what's going on in boxing. It would be strange for us not to talk. I think I look at it completely the other way. It'd be strange for us not to talk about it. If our goal is to serve boxing fans with as much content to keep them interested in our social channels, our platform, our subscription prices, why would you not give them what they want to eat? And they want to eat boxing and drink boxing.
You realize that's not the norm.
I get it. And I'm surprised the opportunity for us to sort of fill that market gap exists. It is strange. It's definitely not something done elsewhere. For us, it's great because we fill a void. And our teams occasionally people ask, why are we promoting this fight? It's like, well, we're doing it for indirect reasons. If you want to talk about the business reasons for it, ultimately it's to maintain a relationship with the consumer. But really, we want to be a destination for the sports we cover in any way we can be. So we want under the DAZN banner, a boxing fan to feel like he or she is being served with everything boxing. So we're going to continue to invest in it. We'll be at fight weeks. We're not broadcasting live. We'll carry content internationally that we don't have in the US from US fight if we can, if it makes business sense. Our journalists, we have a DAZN news outlet that they'll be covering everything. It's a full service offer for boxing fans. It's a similar thing with soccer fans in Germany or soccer fans in Japan. We're covering soccer for those guys. So it's a business-wide sort of strategy. I'm surprised that people are surprised by it in the US on boxing because it makes common sense for me. I don't know why others don't do it.
Do you pay attention? We remember that famous scene. I was talking about it with Eddie last time he was on. UFC's at Madison Square Garden. Canelo's in the locker room. And I think DAZN took a little bit of heat for making him wait.
Yeah. That was a stressful couple of hours for me personally.
Do you regret that?
I think we're pretty honest about, we can talk about other things. We're not going to shy away from it, but we've learned. Boxing's a very different proposition to other content. We're sports media people. 5 years ago, we didn't have many major operations in boxing. I think our first sort of foray into boxing was, McGregor-Mayweather was probably the biggest boxing event, and even some hardcore boxing fans would say that was a circus, right? That was our first experience of boxing. We sort of whet our appetite to think this could be actually impactful for our business. So we've made some mistakes, and I think we've owned them. We've held our hands up. I think fight sports as a whole gets in its own way a little bit. Should a Canelo fight clash with a major UFC card? No, because of that, there is a crossover audience there, not as big as perhaps it's made out to be. And maybe that's one of the things we learned in that process. We pissed off more people than we pleased, I think, in doing that. And we apologise for it pretty immediately. I just chalk it up to one of the things we learned. I don't think we'd do it again. We try and avoid clashing. I think this weekend's a good example. I saw Eddie try and take credit for it, but it was a DAZN conversation with ESPN to avoid the clash. And look, shout out to our friends at ESPN. When we became aware there was going to be a clash, obviously they're West Coast, they're in Vegas, we're on the East Coast. We had a very simple, very quick conversation that resulted in us agreeing.
How does that work? Like you actually get on the phone with them? Really?
These are people who speak the same language as us, run a very similar business.
Were they open to it?
Yeah, 100%. And
they'd be silly not to it. For this particular fight, you're the A side.
I don't even know, even looking like that, it wasn't even a conversation about who's got more leverage. It was more like, this is sensible to serve both our audiences. And to your point earlier about us covering the full sport, we're doing our bit, not that we're as big as ESPN in driving audiences, but we're doing a good job to push our audience to watch that if they want to after our broadcast, and our social channels will promote it, as will our journalistic output. So again, another thing that makes sense to me, I just want clearly, wherever we can, to help boxing get out of its own way. And I think that's a small way that we can do it, avoid clashes wherever possible.
So when it comes to a Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano fight, is it Eddie coming to you guys and saying, like, I can make this deal with MVP? Or are you guys saying to him, how involved are you in the making of this? We're
pretty involved. Fight? I mean, obviously, they're the experts in matchmaking, and they have the relationships with the fighters most of the time. Well, they lead all the relationships with the fighters. But there's an ongoing dialogue about, who we'd want to see fight. There's a, game of chess we play about making sure we're lining people up for the fights that matter. There's a sequencing argument. What makes most sense from a DAZN perspective? Where are we going to drive value from? We're increasingly sophisticated in understanding how boxing drives our business and what not to do and what to do. and we're obviously educating our promotional partners about that as we go. A lot of that is listening to fans. So you'll see us regularly on social media, as will Eddie, to be fair, proactively asking for feedback. We did that particularly the UK. I'm sure you've noticed UK fight fans are particularly vocal, and they're not shy of an opinion on Twitter. We'll go out looking for that, because we literally screenshot those tweets or those Instagram comments, and the ones that have 150 likes or get retweeted or are consistent, we will go and drive a conversation about that. And we use that data to educate Eddie, to educate Golden Boy about what we want to see and what we need to do better and different. So it's a proactive listening exercise for us that we use pretty regularly and pretty consistently to help educate us and our partners.
Are you surprised at how big this has become, this particular fight?
No, I'm not, because I think it represents more than the boxing fight. I think it's reflective of a broader and growing interest in women's sport more generally. We've been investing in women's sport for a long time. Before DAZN, we had a 10-year deal with the WTA for tennis globally. That's halfway through its first term, that deal. Women's sport, when you give women's sport the platform that this fight has got, interviews of people like yourself talking about it, the New York Times coming to the press conference, the WWE doing what they're doing this week to help promote the fight, Barstool Sports throwing the kitchen sink at it from their perspective. When you give it that PR and marketing polish, people are just made aware of it in a way they weren't before, and that brings eyeballs. And when you bring eyeballs, people realise, a bit like Serena Williams, a bit like the top soccer players in women's properties around the world, they think, bloody hell, these girls can fight, and they want to come back and watch more of it. It's literally an awareness problem and a visibility problem. So if we can use our platform, our growing platform, and that of our partners to elevate and put light onto women's boxing, we're confident that business-wise it makes sense. I think we get accused a lot of sort of it being a CSR project, like, oh, it's the right thing to do. You're trying to like look woke or whatever in the eyes of the media. It isn't that. We are not in the business of investing in things because it's, the left wing think it's a good thing to do. We're in the business of growing our business, and this will help grow our business. It will get different groups of fans. It will bring a different audience to a Canelo event, slightly different audience, but it will also attract the same audience that will watch Canelo next week, the hardcore fight fan, the Hispanic fight fan in this country, the Mexican-American fight fan, the British fight fan. They'll come and watch. It's not just the parents of young girls looking for role models. So it's in a way a bit like celebrity or crossover fighting, if you're investing in this stuff, to bring more eyeballs, but it gives these women a platform to show that they are high-quality athletes in their own right, who deserve the same treatment as their male counterparts.
Perhaps you can't tell me the actual number, but could you share what is the most watched fight in DAZN history?
We don't give out that information. I think we've announced previously, like AJ Ruiz 2, I think was our biggest that we've announced. We've had bigger fights than that since. All Canelo events are right up there.
Basically, is it possible this one breaks those?
It's definitely.
Are we trending in that direction?
Possible. I mean, the most watched, we have an eye on, I think 900,000 was the most watched women's boxing event of all time. It was on a linear network in the US a couple of years ago. We have eyes on that. So I think globally the fact...
You think that's attainable?
I think it's not outrageous to think that. We've got these rights globally. We've got them in every market of the world. The promotion's been, I think, the biggest we've been involved in terms of, there's anecdotal stuff, the number of media, the type of media, the interviews that we're being asked to do, the social media numbers, the early subscription buys, all that stuff is like a general direction of travel for us. And I think we're trending very, very strong there. So we're excited about it. And I think I'm not surprised because, one, it's the pound for pound, number one, number two, going at it. MSG is an iconic arena. They've been fantastic partners. You've got the added ingredient of Jake Paul, who, like him or loathe him, brings eyeballs and attention. Eddie obviously has a leading promotional platform into like hardcore traditional boxing on both sides of the pond. And it's cutting through, it's working. There's a bunch of partners working with us who have seen what we're doing and sort of see it align with their values, the WWE being a great example. So yeah, I'm not surprised at all. We knew this would be a major part of a broader campaign that obviously includes Canelo next week, who we're very confident will drive significant numbers. But this is big.
No secret that Jake, as a fighter, Jake Paul, is a free agent. Are you interested in being back in the Jake Paul business?
We love being in the Jake Paul business. It's been great to work with him and his manager Nikisa in the last few weeks on this project. But we've had some success in crossover boxing, for calling it that, celebrity fighting. I don't think Jake and Nikisa would refer to themselves as celebrity fighters anymore. They've gone beyond that. Crossover maybe, but they're beyond celebrity. He's a legitimate athlete in his own right now. I was the one thing about COVID that in our business that really took the wind out of the sails was celebrity fighting. We just had KSI Logan Paul 2. We'd had our first Jake Paul event. We sort of gave birth to this wave of crossover fighting. We got our fair share of abuse for it, as did Eddie. But it was starting to really pick up. Obviously, COVID, we had to make some financial decisions. We stepped back from that. But yeah, I think we are interested in getting back into that business. Obviously, you have to make deals that make sense. But yeah, we're looking at any type of boxing that will drive audience and keep our users engaged. So why not?
So you announced the big Canelo deal. And again, with every big announcement comes a little bit of heat as well. Can you explain the rationale behind going back on pay-per-view after the big, hoopla, pay-per-view dead and whatnot? You knew that was coming, right? You knew people would bring that back up. Why did you guys decide that in order to bring Canelo, we had to go the pay-per-view route as well?
It's pretty simple. We believe we are the best value offer in boxing. And we've clearly given significant cost reduction for major pay-per-view level events over the last 4 years in the US and in the UK more recently. We want to continue being the best value play in boxing. Canelo's star and his associated commercial deal making sort of ability has risen in the last 4 years. All credit to him. So the cost of doing business with Canelo have gone up. The cost of doing business in boxing with the top guys have gone up. There's more competition. There's more broadcasters playing in that space, and so for us to make a deal work that allows us to continue including Canelo in that value offer, we needed to charge a higher price point. We are, of course, always wanting to give as consumer friendly an offer as possible. It's better for our business to do that. We think we are doing that despite the addition of pay-per-view, and we're confident that in doing so, yeah, as I say, we'll continue to give fans the best value that they can expect in market. We knew it was coming. One of the things I think we learned, you talked about the Canelo delay with the UFC clash. Another thing we learned, I think we were a bit too brash with the original pay-per-view is dead sort of campaign. Looking back on it, do I regret that? Probably. But ultimately, I'm confident looking at how we're engaging with fans, the number of fans that are sticking around, the general sentiment around that is, what a great fight. There's a few vocal sort of opponents to it who are continuing to manage them on social media, and they've got every right to do that. But I'm confident that they'll come in their numbers and they'll stick around because of that value offer that we bring.
And so for those that don't know, because I do believe it's actually quite similar to the ESPN UFC pay-per-view deal. If I'm a DAZN subscriber, I have to, and what is it now? I have like a 1 year thing, so I don't even remember what I paid for it.
Yes, you pay an additional $59.99 to buy the pay-per-view.
And I can but I can still watch it on the app and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, you watch it on the app, it's exactly the same. We'll also have it off-platform on traditional linear pay-per-view because there is a portion of the audience who still want to do that. So that's.
And is he the only one right now?
That's the only pay-per-view that we've announced. Yeah.
Wow.
I think, and
will you do more? You think?
I think we will, but I think we'll be sparing with it. I think we'll use it sparingly. I think we'll pick and choose when we use it. What I would ask is patience. Give us a year and compare a year from May the 7th through to 2023 and see, comparing us to other broadcasters, who delivered the best value in boxing. I assure our consumers, I promise them it will be DAZN. We're not going to gouge them on pay-per-view every 2 or 3 weeks. Won't name names, but some broadcasters do that because they don't want to take financial risk. We're willing to take financial risk where it makes sense. We are sophisticated in understanding what fights cut through. We'll use our funds to do that, and we'll serve as many fights as possible, the vast majority, as subscription fights in that annual or monthly subscription that people have. The occasional, when we need to fight, will be on pay-per-view, and we'll always try and manage the cost of those as best we can.
And I was talking to Eddie about Joshua Usyk 2. Correct me if I'm wrong. Joshua has one fight left with Sky.
No, Joshua's a free agent.
He's a free agent
in the UK. Yeah.
Interesting. He's an Eddie guy.
He's an Eddie guy. He's an Eddie guy for life. He signed a lifelong promotional commitment to
what
Eddie.
A deal.
Signing your life away to Eddie Hearn is a dangerous game.
Tremendous. What are the chances that fight ends up on DAZN?
Yeah, we're not quite in that stage of the conversations yet. Eddie and Matchroom have got to go and get a site deal sorted. They've got to agree terms between the fighters. There's obviously the additional complication of Usyk and his sort of personal situation, having left the Ukraine recently, which obviously is tough for him. So when that is all sorted, they'll come back to the broadcast market to us and Sky Sports and the rest of the UK market and say, right, let's have bids for broadcast rights. We'll be involved in that conversation. I like to think we'll be competitive. We're obviously going to do our homework and plan for that. But AJ, a bit like Canelo, is a transcendent star. He's a guy who, you know, my parents would want to watch who are not traditional fight fans. He has that transcendent appeal. Canelo has that. There's very few who do. Katie Taylor has it in Ireland. And we want to be in business with those kind of people, obviously. So, we'll be involved in those conversations when they happen.
That's what I love so much about boxing, that, you know, these fight, you know, like the Teofimo Lopez fight, it all of a sudden, you know, there's the purse bid, but it becomes a free agent. You guys pick it up. It works for you. It maybe works against you now because now Kambosos is fighting Haney, and you know, but you know what I mean.
The rough with the smooth, right?
Yeah, but I love that. I love that. You know, that AJ now can go to the open market, and if you want to be in business, you know, this is all good for the fighters.
We often talk about this. Boxing as a whole is a soap opera. There are very few sports where the deal making is as relevant to the fan base as it is in boxing. Boxing fans are really smart as to how the business of their sport works. It means that they're very vocal against businesses on Twitter and on social media more generally, but they understand it. They understand what moves the needle for broadcast. They care about how many pay-per-view buys we do next weekend versus what Showtime have done previously. They love that, and it's part of the drama of all of it, which makes it very unique. I think UFC probably is the only other, or MMA is the only other sort of sport that has that. Soccer fans care about the ownership of their clubs, and NFL fans are similar, but they're not that involved in the details of trade contract points and all that stuff.
Ratings. No one's talking about the NBA ratings.
No one's having a go at the owner of an NFL team because ESPN or Fox did a bad number on a Monday night. So it's part of boxing. It's unique, and I think one of the things we've learned in the last 4 or 5 years being as involved as we are in boxing.
And so you referenced this. What are you guys doing with Barstool next week? It's like a second stream?
Yeah, so obviously we've worked with Barstool from a marketing perspective for a while. Obviously they have a very passionate and loyal fan base. They have a relatively controversial sort of tone of voice, and they love fight sports. They love the UFC. They love boxing. We've got an alternative broadcast, again, behind the pay-per-view paywall on DAZN. So if you want to watch traditional DAZN commentary in English or Spanish, that's there as 2 options. A third option will be an alternative broadcast led by Dave Portnoy and Big Cat, who'll be commentating on the fight in their own unique style. So you'll see a lot of Barstool involvement in the fight week next week, a lot of content we've been producing with them, alongside the Ryan Garcia fight, the Katie Taylor fight, Serrano fight this weekend, and going into Canelo Bivol fight week. They're covering it in full as a key promotional partner for us. And that's great because it's introducing these guys to the Barstool audience. Ryan Garcia, clearly age-wise, is probably similarly aged to most of the Barstool audience. But it's key for us to use platforms like that and channels like that to take boxing to a younger generation, a different demographic of fans who might otherwise not be aware or not be interested. We're trying to educate them and introduce them to the sport. And obviously, candidly, sell them pay-per-views and sell them subscriptions. So we're delighted to be in business with Dave and his team. They're great partners, and we're going to hopefully see a lot of success with it next week.
We'll end on this if we can. You know, I love the sport of boxing right now. I think it's on fire. I think it's fascinating. I love talking about it, watching it. I understand my audience is an MMA audience, and I try not to disrespect them.
You're the bridge, though.
I'm trying. Yes, I'm trying. Yes, that's exactly good. I like that. I love the fact, and we were sort of texting a little bit about this. I love the fact that at the end of the day, even Eddie alluded to this, like the fighters are number one. It's not so much the brands. As big as Top Rank and Matchroom is, in boxing, it's always about the fighters, the personalities. In the sport that I love so dearly, MMA, not necessarily the case. Things like uniform deals and all that drive me nuts. I fell in love with combat sports because of guys like Arturo Gatti and Mike Tyson and whatnot. I love the unique characters. If there is one thing that you could take from MMA and apply it to the sport of boxing, is there anything that comes to mind? Is because let's be honest, I have said many times, I think MMA is actually a lot more like pro wrestling in the way it's structured. There's one big organization, WWE. There's some smaller ones, AEW, if you're familiar with any, Bellator. It's not really like boxing. People want to try to compare the two, but it's actually not a fair comparison. Is there anything from MMA that you would love to see come to boxing? I think MMA does a better job, particularly the UFC, in matchmaking. We have to cut through a lot of politics to even get into conversations. We're a part of this. We're part of the problem. We're also trying to be part of the solution. Fighters and promoters having exclusive network deals means that extricating fighters from those to go and fight other guys who they should be fighting, that fans want to see them fight, who have exclusive deals with other promoters and other networks, is very, very difficult.
UFC, for obvious reasons, does not have that problem. I think that helps the fan see the fight they want to see. Dana and his team can say, you're fighting him or she's fighting her. Get on with it. And it gets scheduled, and it allows them to plan their schedule better. It allows them to invest more confidently. All of that makes the sport better. I would love to see boxing get out of its own way, cut through its own BS at times, frankly, and make that happen. We are trying to be very open door. The situation with Devin Haney is a good example. We had a long-term relationship with him. We could have locked him into longer-term relationships. We chose not to do that, in part because we think that there's a flexibility and a freedom to allowing him to fight off-platform. I think boxing is very hard. The perfect solution probably doesn't exist. There's not a silver bullet to do it. But having the foliage of fight making and matchmaking cleared so the best fights can happen more quickly would be fantastic. There's not many pound for pound top fights that will get made as easily as Taylor Serrano. Men's boxing is harder than women's boxing. And I think that is the fundamental problem in boxing today.
And another reason why this fight is so special, right? It's number 1 versus number 2. According to a stat that I read from ESPN, the last time this happened was 2008. Would you like some water?
I love some water. Sorry.
Yes, here you go. I know you got emotional talking about that.
Very emotional.
Was 2008 when Marquez and Pacquiao fought for the second time. So it's been, 14 years since number 1 versus number 2 in men's boxing. And of course, in women's boxing, it's never happened before. The EVP of DAZN, Mr. Joe Markowski, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. Congrats on all your success. Dare I say the Markowski era of DAZN, way better than the Skipper era of DAZN.
That's harsh.
Here I am trying
earlier. He's a good
guy,
friend of mine.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah. We were talking last year a little bit when he went to Meadowlark. Didn't work out. I'm a big fan of his as well. I wasn't there when he was at ESPN, but I'm just trying to stir the pot a little bit.
That's your job.
Yeah, that's my job. And it's great to be able to contribute just a tiny bit to the coverage this week. It's a huge honor for me, honestly. I'm looking forward to the first face-to-face coming out. I think later today is what they told me. And then the second one with Jake and Eddie, which I think will be very nice. That's tomorrow. Okay, Taylor Serrano, Madison Square Garden, April 30th, this Saturday. First time ever, 2 women headlining the Mecca, the world's most famous arena.